Welcome to this episode of Our College of Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. Imagine a bridge spanning a river with all of the structural elements, including the cables, deck, and piers, working in concert to provide sturdy support. Metaphorically speaking, at one end of the bridge, you can find relief, food, shelter, safety, daycare, healthcare, and other needs. Crossing the bridge, you find opportunity through training and education that provide pathways from jobs to better jobs and careers. And on the other side of the bridge is transformation, with meaningful employment supporting social and economic mobility. The bridge can only stand and be truly sturdy for people in their journey if all three elements are working in concert: relief, opportunity, and transformation, or community and faith-based organizations, Ivy Tech, and employers. This sturdy support is what Bridges of Hope Strategic Partnership Initiative aims to achieve. I'm really excited to have two of the architects of Bridges of Hope and some of those bridges with us today to talk about this program. And first up is Chris Lowery. Hi, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Kara. Thanks for having us.
Glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about what you do here at the college. I think you've been on the podcast maybe once before, but it's been a while.
Right. I think one time. And thanks for having me back. I serve as Senior Vice President of Workforce Careers and Adult Strategy at the college. That has kind of morphed over time. Been in this role about 4.5 years. And as certainly you know, and some others know, it was originally a position that was mandated by the General Assembly to have a parallel, if you will, to your role, the provost, of a chief workforce officer, like the chief academic officer. And of course, as you and I tell folks, our work is just braided in what we do for the college and for the state of Indiana. And in that work, I have the privilege of being able to lead what we're doing from a workforce standpoint in terms of aligning, engaging, and advancing in our key economic sectors, working and having helped develop, along with Stacy, career coaching and employer connections strategy and framework, and now really leaning into, and with Stacy's leadership, adult strategy, things ranging from PLA to Bridges of Hope and ways that we can really engage Hoosier adults to help them skill up and realize their dreams of personal and economic prosperity. Excellent.
Welcome again, Chris. I'm excited to have you and have this conversation. And our other guest today is Stacy Townsley. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, good morning. Again, Stacy Townsley. I serve as Vice President for Adult Strategy and Statewide Partnerships on Chris's team. I've been at the college for about 3.5 years. Initially came on board to help implement a lot of the workforce alignment change that Chris referenced. And really stepping into this role, really just in recent months, but building on work that we as a team have been doing to provide that critical lens on supporting that adult learner from recruitment all the way through completion and job progression. And so a lot of what I do is very cross-functional. And so collaborating with those in and outside of the college to really think about our systems and how we support adult learners.
Excellent. And you actually, I got to toot your horn a little bit. You just received national recognition. You were named one of 12 designers in residence with the Education Design Lab. And I imagine we'll see footprints of Bridges of Hope in some of the Ed Design Lab work that might come out.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. Yes, I'm excited. And you're very right. I think it aligns perfectly with what we're trying to do at the college. And I'm excited to have that opportunity to share and learn. So
good. Well, congratulations to you, and can't wait to see the work that comes out of there. So let's turn our attention to Bridges of Hope. What was the inspiration for the Bridges of Hope initiative?
Kara, really, I've been thinking about this a lot. And, how do you kind of take what has become an idea and a concept and now building into a strategy and share where it came from? And I would point to 3 different things. And I'll start where one I think is pretty logical to look at and define. And that is the work that has been done in the past few years with the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership by the Brookings Institution and the American Enterprise Institute. Interesting to even start and thinking about that. So the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, or CICP as they're known, really focuses on, and not just Central Indiana, but broadly, economic and social prosperity. And they contracted first with Brookings Institution and then added on the work of the American Enterprise Institute to help take a look at challenges to those goals of social and economic prosperity. And, at the base of all of that, what both organizations really helped to find in their research is that there are not enough good and promising jobs for people. And, building further on that, the realization that there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of deep-seated poverty, not just in central Indiana, but across Indiana. And that right, there's more than one element to a solution of achieving, those great goals. What I think is an interesting undercurrent of not only the research, but the institutions that were involved in that, Brookings and then AEI, or the American Enterprise Institute, is they're both recognized as just absolutely some of the best think tank research organizations like on the planet. And one is center left and one is center right. And I just thought that was so refreshing that an organization would say, let's bring those together. I could editorialize on that, but wow, we just need to do more of that, right? And, within that, if you start really digging into their materials and then looking even more deeply at what Brookings and AEI stand for, both recognize that individuals oftentimes in life need relief, right? It's like Maslow's hierarchy. I'm not going to be able to focus on many things if my family or I are hungry, or if we're not safe, or if we don't have shelter, basic safety and those things. And then as the description you read, I think really eloquently puts it, that providing those things allows the chance to get to opportunity and eventually the transformation that can come with work and good work and being able to be actively engaged in your community. So the Brookings and AEI portion of this. The other part that really helped to catalyze and bring this together is many of us over the past 15 months have personally really become engaged at a grassroots level with community and faith-based organizations to say, how can we help? And, and part of it is work. And then part of it is just like what can I do in the evening, or what can I do on a Saturday morning? And repeatedly, some individuals who are leaders of organizations like that kept using one distinct word, especially last spring and really through the summer and fall, and that was hope. And in that, a lot of individuals being served just don't have hope. And that's gut-wrenching. And when you hear it over and over and, really have some sometimes emotional conversations about what individuals are facing. And so that's the second thing. And those are the two things that are most important. But then thirdly, in my life, I've just been so unbelievably fortunate to be able to serve across the places on those bridges. Today I have this incredible good fortune to be with Ivy Tech, to be able to do this work every day, to most mornings pinch myself and go, I actually get to do this. I've been on the transformation side in terms of working for a really great employer in Indiana, Hill and Brand, publicly traded, 20 years. I got to do that and help hire people and create ideas and those things. And then, in other parts of my life, including today, I've gotten to be on the relief side of it, not employed there, but on the board of Gleaners Food Bank and on the board of Sagamore, and for many years on the board of Safe Passage here in southeastern Indiana, where services and programs and shelter are provided for women and children of domestic violence. And I've just been so fortunate and blessed to be able to get to do those things that are really across that bridge. As I read the AEI and the Brookings materials and then their deeper research, what I and we have been hearing, in the community, it all just made sense that it would come together and that they are really inextricably connected for a really solid bridge to help folks traverse from wherever they are to social and economic prosperity.
It's always fun to see your passion come through for something like this. And passion is, I think, part of what makes this specific initiative really important, is that dedication to seeing our students as whole people and addressing all of the challenges that they have. So, Stacy, and I want to give you credit. Chris mentioned the introduction that I read. You wrote that. So thank you very much for giving me such a beautiful way to describe this program. But I'd love to pitch to you first for this next question. I know Chris may jump in, but tell us more about the type of collaboration that's envisioned for the organizations involved.
I think Chris touched a little bit on it in the sense that we knew the wicked problems that are presenting us during rapid recovery, and again, just baked into the mission that we have as a college, require collaboration, right? So collaboration itself is nothing new. As we think about how we're collaborating and what that really means, I'd like to present one key concept, and that is this continuation, this collaboration continuation. And on one end, you have really just the transactional side of collaboration where you're just, I have something that you need and you have something that I need, and it's very transactional. And one might say it's very internally focused to your own organization and meeting those needs. And then as you go along this continuum, then you get to the point where you're recognizing the value even more so that each partner brings to the table, and starting to think, how might we come together to create something that we otherwise couldn't do ourselves. And so as you continue across that bridge or that continuum, then you end up towards more what I call transformational collaboration. And that is where you're going outside of even your own needs. You're outward looking. Each partner is coming together to say, what can we bring to the table to create something completely different that really does address systemic needs? And so that sense of deeper collaboration is really what underlies everything that we're doing with Bridges of Hope. And how you get there is not an easy road, right? If it were, then we would already be doing it. And so that leads to the second key concept that shapes this strategy, and that is we're really talking about systems change here. The underlying systemic connections that we have with our community partners, our community-based organizations, our faith-based organizations, our employers, our philanthropic partners. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And so something fundamentally has to change. And so that means, how do we come together differently? So those two key concepts shape the thought process that we've been undergoing for a few months now. I don't know, Chris, if you have anything more to add to that.
Well, I think what you said already, Stacy, is just spot on. And those listening who don't know, Stacy brings an understanding of real strong collaboration and collective impact, sort of like nobody I've worked with before, and has done even research in this area, which is partly why she is just so ideal to be, helping to lead this. And it's that it is that systems change, but also then that outsized impact that I think we envision, that some of the most deeply seated challenges we face, we actually can address, but we have to think differently about our collaborative partners as we begin to do so. And really important to what you said too, Stacy, that this isn't like transactional. I give you A, you give me B. It's not like that.
Well, and two, Chris touched on the relational piece of this really came to bear during rapid recovery. How are we connecting with our fellow human beings? How are we helping them in times of crisis? But what I think is most interesting and what we really seek is, how do you even go beyond the relational? How do you just make this sort of the default way of operating as a college and with our partners? And so it's again, that systems shift, but the relational is key because it's the human at the center.
Let's talk a little bit about who is involved in developing and piloting the Bridges of Hope strategy.
So a group of folks that's sort of wide and varying, Kara, certainly individuals who work for the college. Gosh, Kat Stromecki has been involved, and wow, talking about someone who just, I think, wakes up every day and says, how do I help students with whatever challenges they've got? We've had different chancellors in the conversation, some who frankly are doing this kind of work in their communities already, perhaps with groups of pastors or leaders of community-based organizations, and saying, so what are you doing and how are you doing and how can we take this and grow it? From a consulting standpoint, had our friends at Thomas P. Miller and Associates involved. All of those folks have just been incredibly additive to this. I think where we have seen some of the eye-opening or where we've had the eye-opening experiences and that have really started to really inform this work have been in the relationships with and the partners we have who are doing community and faith-based work and who are employers, the employers who've said, yes, I'll be part of this. We're not quite sure what it looks like yet, but put me in. So I'll give you a couple examples to help frame it up. On the community and faith-based side of it, we've had two extraordinary partners, one representing really each of those. Shepherd Community, which is a community-based organization on the Near East side of Indianapolis. They've been around for decades, located about 4000 East Washington Street. They have a school. They provide childcare. They provide all kinds of relief services also that you would expect. They can help individuals, find transportation. They do food distributions. They do drive-through flu shots and all of those kinds of things. And then on the faith-based side of it, New Corinthian Baptist Church on the northwest side of Indianapolis in Pike Township. And in both instances, at Shepherd, the executive director is Jay Height, and that whole team have been involved with us. And then at New Corinthian, the senior pastor, Terry Webster, who essentially started and grew the church into one of the largest African-American churches in Indiana. And a super employer, I'll use all of these folks, all of these entities as examples. A super employer in this work has been One America, one of Indiana's premier financial insurance organizations. Most people would know it's the former AUL Tower in Indianapolis. They occupy, that's their building, one of the tallest buildings in the state. So as we've done the work with Shepherd and New Corinthian, it's allowed us to test out some notions. The reality is, and Terry and Jay have both been very candid with us, and we get this, and I think we get it more now than ever, that their trusted voice to the individuals they serve and in the communities they serve it's golden. As an example, on the Near East side of Indianapolis, zip codes 46201 and 03, when Shepherd Community speaks, it's like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. When Shepherd Community speaks, people listen. And Jay said to me one day, Chris, you could spend $1 million on a campaign for Ivy Tech on the Near East side. And I said, and I kind of finished a sentence. I said, yeah, Jay, and you could put out one of your YouTube videos in English and Spanish, and you will crush us each time. And I say that with great admiration because we did some testing with that. So, for example, we provided to Shepherd information on taking Hoosiers to the next level and said, could you help get this word out? Well, first of all, they did that like 24 hours later and in a video broadcast that was in English and Spanish. And we knew that the individuals they were reaching would hear from that trusted voice, honestly, better than they ever would from, at least me, maybe others at Ivy Tech, but better than they ever would me. And so that was one example. So think about also then, the success of a student. During taking Hoosiers to the next level, as we rolled that out in the fall, we decided with input from Shepherd and from New Corinthian to start reaching out to students who were in taking Hoosiers to the next level together. And for example, led by Kat Stromecki on the Ivy Tech side, and then the team at Indianapolis, and then the folks at Shepherd, we began communicating with students specifically in those zip codes who were in those programs and letting them know if they needed support. So think on the relief side, here's where you could go. Here is a specific person you could ask. Here is his or her phone number and email and all of that stuff. And gave them examples that, at Shepherd, here's when there's going to be a food distribution. Here's when you can get a free flu shot. Here's how to find out about childcare. All of those things that every one of which, is a challenge for most folks. But if you're going through a really tough time like COVID and living in poverty, they're just exacerbated. And, we did the same with New Corinthian. And then as we built out further with One America and we as a college have already had a partnership. And we said, gosh, would you like to partner with us even more deeply in relationship to these CBOs and FBOs? And they were all in right from the start. And so then we began targeting career fairs, career sessions, career opportunities, jobs directly to individuals. And then we expanded the communication, and students began receiving communication that was sort of a trifecta, if you will, because it's like a big win from Shepherd plus Ivy Tech plus One America saying, look, if you need help with this, here's where to go. If you'd like to participate in some interviews or find out about these jobs, here you go. And so we, just with these organizations started, informally building out the bridges. And the bottom line is individuals from taking Hoosiers to the next level are starting to be hired by One America. Meanwhile, supported by New Corinthian and Shepherd. And by the way, New Corinthian providing very similar kinds of services in the Pike Township area. And, we see both of those just growing and serving as models. Stacy, I talked far too long. What else would you add?
No, I think one important thing that Chris highlighted here is that just started doing. It kind of reminds me of the phrase of, you can't really steer a car unless the wheels are moving. And so you think about, we talked a little bit about piloting Bridges of Hope, but in my mind, it's less of a formal program that you're piloting. It's just these concepts of what can we provide as a toolkit? Who would like to take up pieces of this toolkit, this model, incorporate it into what they're doing, or start from scratch and use it as a blueprint? That's the hope here. And that's where we will be, again, increasingly pulling in campuses who are interested into this work. But I think the examples that Chris highlighted are inspiring. Just what we could do just by getting the wheels moving.
It's one of those things of once you see the model once, you want to replicate it in other places. And so I think that's the big takeaway for me here, is that it's a great model to be replicated. So what are the specific anticipated outcomes of Bridges of Hope?
So Chris and I often laugh. It's like 1 + 1 + 1 = 4, right? That's the whole system's collective impact. Certainly, I think we would like to see more people knowing about opportunities, whether or not they actually end up enrolling in Ivy Tech. That's part of the equation, but certainly not all of it. And so while we are certainly happy to have enrollments, I think we are trying to look at this as, one, how are we building that infrastructure to support deeper collaboration? That's one outcome. Two, the more people we can reach with tools and resources and hope, that's another outcome. And three, even tying it into all of these other initiatives within the college, how do you leverage those, our career coaching, employer connections with our employer partners? How do we incorporate this into the strategic plan and all of the metrics aligned there? And clearly, I think another outcome could be, and I'm just saying this, there are various regional initiatives underway and a lot of funding coming down the pipeline from the state and federal government. This could be clearly a model that could help fundamentally change how we are able to utilize the dollars and to provide long-lasting impact. Again, systems change. And those are pretty vague outcomes, but we're clearly thinking long-term too.
Sure. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. And Stacy, those were excellent. I don't think they are vague. I think they're very clear to our mission and needs within Indiana. And of course, I love the collective impact math, right? That helping it up for people. Some things I would add, you referenced enrollment could be part of the outcome of this. And it is, it will continue to be, and it has been. And I'll give you an example in a moment. Also helping to make sure that as we seek to provide relief to individuals who are seeking educational opportunity, that we do so more effectively. So thinking about those things alone in the enrollment side of it, and going back to Stacy's analogy, you got to start driving the car. One of the events that we did early last fall or late summer was at a food distribution at New Corinthian Baptist Church. And 2 weeks before this what ended up being an enormous event, we all sort of held hands and said, okay, sure, let's try this. And the church had a very large food distribution where several hundred people came, driving up, by the way, in their automobiles to receive food. And the pastor said, well, what if you guys had information there on your Ivy Tech programs? And we said, well, that's a great idea. And so we did, and the Commission for Higher Education joined us, and Secretary Milo with Career Connections and Talent joined us, and others, 21st Century Scholars. And we made this into something more than just that. So in the process, we helped to reach people, potential students who might not have been aware of what was available to them. Similarly, if we think on the relief side of it, when someone receives something that comes from not just Ivy Tech, but also jointly from Shepherd Community or another community faith-based organization, they can see the broader services that are available to them, right, and help them through whatever challenges they might be facing. And then, and I should have had a V8. I forgot to mention earlier the wonderful team from Career Connections, Career Coaching and Employer Connections. They've been part and parcel to this all along too. And, as we've knitted these organizations together and built the bridge, they've been there on the career side. So thinking in those zip codes of Shepherd Community and One America wanting to hire individuals and et cetera, the CCEC team has come alongside and held special sessions to help students make sure they're prepared with a good resume. And they know, what kind of questions might come at them. And to develop that mini, if you will, a career development portfolio. So outcomes in that instance would be that more students, are also being better prepared on the quote careers unquote side of it, that professionalism side of it. And ultimately, Kara, like the very best thing I can think of is through and across this bridge, the student completes what she or he was seeking and gets offered a job by a great employer like One America.
I think that definitely is the goal. And you've mentioned Kat Stromecki a couple of times, which made me think of the Real College Survey. And so for those who want some really tangible outcomes, I want to read just a couple of the data points from a 5-page report that I'll link to in the show notes. We, back in July of 2020, so this data by the time this episode airs is a year old, and we had a 7.2% response rate here at Ivy Tech. We know that not only is, we usually want a 10% response rate for surveys, but we also know because this was a computer-based survey that our results are drastically underreported given what we were surveying. And I'm just going to share 3 data points. 53% of our students at Ivy Tech experienced at least one of the following measures of basic needs insecurity: food insecurity, housing insecurity, or being homeless. In addition, students who held at least one job prior to the pandemic, 24% lost their job and 34% saw reduced hours and or pay, and 49% are experiencing at least moderate anxiety about their job. And I don't have any data to point my next statement to, but while we know the unemployment rate in Indiana has dropped, we also know that many of our students are not going to be reemployed because they have not yet earned the education that they need to be employed, or they're underemployed from their potential of where they could be. And one final statistic that I think really ties to Bridges of Hope and to the next question I want to ask you, which is, among those who did not apply for other financial supports, such as unemployment benefits, SNAP, emergency aid, any of those things, 77% of our students stated that those supports were either not available to them or they believed they were ineligible. And I think that is one of the key reasons why we've got to bring those supports and those resources right to the front of students and make them know that they are eligible. And we've got to work with these other organizations that don't necessarily put the same rules or frameworks or barriers around access to resources. So with my host editorial comment there, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about how this ties into the college's strategic plan.
How does it not?
That is a better question.
It literally addresses every goal.
It does. Most definitely. It does. Definitely.
Yeah. And if those were editorial comments, sign me up for that paper, right? Just listening to those statistics are enough reason for us to be doing this. A lot of our fellow Hoosiers are just facing something really crummy.
Definitely.
And by the way, I'm so glad you pointed out that, it's, I was talking about this during the commencement address in Evansville. It's really easy to look and say, oh, well, Indiana has, unemployment rate back below 4%. Well, the problem is there are a lot of numbers underlying that don't get shown. People who are, completely out of the workforce, and it's not getting counted, or people who are vastly underemployed, or people who are trying to work 3 jobs now to make work what used to be one good or decent job. So all of those things, and the fact that too oftentimes an individual doesn't know all the services and available options to him or her. So yeah, this fits so well with, quite honestly, every point, every goal of Ivy Tech's strategic plan. I won't go through them, but when you back up and look also at the impact of the pandemic, not just from a health standpoint, but from an economic standpoint, right? We know specific sectors were hit the hardest, and they're still the slowest in coming back: service, hospitality, restaurant, and some others. And disproportionately, jobs that were lost were those that individuals who have lower levels of post-secondary attainment, or just no post-secondary attainment in terms of recognized training or education, underrepresented, marginalized populations, people of color. It's right. There has just been this disproportionate workforce and economic impact. All of that translates to our strategic plan in focusing not just on enrollment, right? Again, that's sort of transactional to think, okay, well, here's enrollment. How could we increase enrollment? Well, how can we be really focused and help individuals who need what we have in terms of training and education and skilling up to get that good or better job? Certainly all the way through goal 8. And I referenced in terms of people who have been disproportionately impacted, but on an ongoing basis to knit together relief and opportunity and transformation, always having an eye toward diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Clearly, just with, in my view, every goal of this college and the retention aspect, we talked a little bit about that if not only Ivy Tech is on the side of that student helping him or her, but also, a community organization that's literally in the neighborhood is helping an individual, she or he is going to have more success, and they're going to get to completion. And if we're really, really intentional about having that employer engaged, there's just going to be a much greater likelihood of workforce success, getting that work and learn experience, or getting that job offer. Again, when we're tying that together and we're tying career coaching and those elements together from CCEC, the outcomes are just going to improve for the student. And if they do for the student, it will for the college. Jeez.
One thing to add too, I think coming out of this, and it's probably happened in the past, I'm just not aware of it, but really engaging with our state partners, DWD and CHE and others around this type of work has inspired the fact that they're going to join us on our strategy teams to really dig into this and to provide the data and to be a true partner in that way with the college's strategic plan.
That is awesome. We end every episode with a call to action, and I'm actually going to ask the two of you to sort of summarize most of the call to action here, which is, how can folks get involved in this?
Well, if you know you're interested, there are a couple of different paths, right? Because we have a formal strategy 2.4, that's coming alongside and supporting tactically what might come out of this. We're still in the planning stages of this model, but we're getting ready to plan for some sessions where we invite those who are interested to participate. We'll have a toolkit that we'll be developing, and I think Kristen Moreland's team will help facilitate those sessions alongside our consulting partner, TPMA. Will be a toolkit that we'll walk through, and how might the campuses use that model to incorporate into what they're doing, or if they're starting from scratch, what supports do they need? I think this is really a call to action to at least consider this different way of engaging if they're not already doing it, that knowing that systems office is here to support and that we also have a whole army of folks prepared to do support through tactical efforts.
And Stacy, I would only add to that, and this is like very tactically speaking, if you want to get engaged, send Stacy Townsley or Chris Lowery an email or just call us. We would love to have you engaged. And frankly, wherever you are on that continuum, I have seen, we've all seen some just incredible work happening at campuses to do exactly this. And if you'd like to be, knitted into this work with other people who are really deeply thinking about this, toolkits that are evolving, frankly, funding that we're seeking to support the work of the college in this, or if it's something you think, gosh, I think we should be doing more of that, and maybe we need some ideas around that or some strategies around that. Wherever you and your campus may be on this continuum as you listen to this, if you want to be engaged, if this makes sense to you, just reach out to Stacy or me, because we would love to have your brain power on this.
Excellent. Well, I'll make public here that I would love to be involved. So sign me up wherever that needs to. And for others that would like to do that, keep an eye out for an invitation to those sessions that Stacy mentioned, or reach out to Chris and Stacy if you're interested in being involved. Thanks again for joining this episode of Our College Your Voices. I want to thank Stacy Townsley, Vice President of Adult Strategy and Statewide Partnerships at Systems Office, and Chris Lowery, Senior Vice President of Workforce Alignment at Systems Office. It was great to hear about this and learn more about this initiative. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at KNM Tweets. Our producer is Sarah Ferguson. You can reach us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivytech.edu. Don't forget, if you're an Ivy Tech faculty or staff member, you can join our Microsoft Teams listener community. Instructions on that come out every Thursday in the Thursday email. Our website, where you'll find links to our show notes, is ivytech.edu/podcast. Production assistance for this and every episode provided by Becky Campbell and the Ivy Tech Community College Creative Services team, and our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. Theme music and post-production services provided by Jen Eads at the Brassie Broadcasting Company, and we will talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.